Picture this: the brutal battlefields of ancient China, more than 3,000 years ago. The Shang Dynasty rules, a world of bronze ritual vessels and oracle bone divination, where power is unequivocally male. Kings, warriors, and priests all men. Or so we thought. Because for centuries, the story of one of history's most remarkable women was entirely lost, buried not just under the earth, but under the weight of assumption. Now, imagine the shockwaves that rippled through the archaeological world in 1976 when a team broke into an untouched royal tomb. This wasn't just any burial, it was a time capsule, and its occupant would single-handedly shatter our understanding of women's roles in the ancient world. She was a queen, a high priestess, a mother, and a military general who commanded not just respect, but entire armies. Her name was Fu Hao, and she is the only Shang monarch whose tomb, found intact with its treasures, speaks to us directly from the depths of time. Her story is so compelling. It feels more like legend than history, but the evidence is undeniable. Stick with us on this ancient odyssey, because the tale of the warrior queen of China is one you won't soon forget. If you're fascinated by stories that rewrite your understanding of history, make sure you subscribe to Ancient Odyssey. To truly appreciate the singularity of Fu Hao's story, we need to step back into the landscape of her time. We are in the latter part of the Shang Dynasty, around 1200 BCE, in what is now the Hunan province of China. This was a Bronze Age society, powerful and sophisticated, but also deeply superstitious and brutal. The Shang king was the absolute center of the universe, a linchpin between the mortal world and the spirit world of his ancestors. His capital, Inshu, was a sprawling metropolis of palaces, workshops, and temples, but the spiritual life of the kingdom was dominated by one crucial practice: divination. The Shang were consumed with understanding the will of their ancestors and deities, and they did this by applying hot metal rods to the shoulder bones of oxen or the plastrons of turtles. The cracks that appeared were interpreted as answers from the divine, and these questions and answers were meticulously carved into the bone itself. These are the famous oracle bones, and it is from these ancient records, these direct memos from the dawn of Chinese history, that we first learn the name Fu Hao. It was a world of strict ritual, where warfare was constant against surrounding tribes, and political alliances were sealed through marriages. The king had many consorts, who were often given to him from subordinate tribes as a way to secure loyalty. In this hypermasculine world of military conquest and sacred ritual, a woman's role was typically defined by her relationship to the king. Yet, against this backdrop, Fu Hao doesn't just appear, she explodes onto the scene. She was not a passive bride given as a token of peace. The oracle bones reveal her as a force of nature who actively participated in, and even led, the most critical aspects of Shang life. She was one of the many wives of King Wu Ding, but the records show she quickly became his most prominent and trusted. So, how did a woman in this society amass such unprecedented power? It began, it seems, on the battlefield, a place where Fu Hao shatters all our preconceptions about women in the ancient world. The oracle bones tell us a story that would be incredible if it weren't so well documented in the meticulous records of the Shang court. Fu Hao was not a symbolic figurehead. She was a tactical military commander who led campaigns and wielded authority over thousands of soldiers. Think of the logistics, the strategy, the sheer force of will required to command an army in the Bronze Age. The oracle bones reveal King Wu Ding, deeply concerned for her campaigns, inquiring of the spirits whether the time was right for her to attack an enemy state, or whether she should gather more troops before a battle. In one particularly striking series of divinations, the king is recorded as asking the ancestors if he should order Fu Hao to lead the charge against the Tufang, a powerful and persistent enemy of the Shang. The fact that he entrusted her with this critical mission against a major threat speaks volumes about her strategic brilliance. But her most stunning military achievement, recorded with pride, was a single campaign where she was granted 13,000 soldiers. To put that in perspective, this was the largest army ever recorded in the Shang oracle bones, and it was placed under the sole command of a woman. She led this massive force to a decisive victory against the Chang, cementing her reputation as the Shang's most formidable general. She didn't just lead the fight against one tribe. The bones mention her leading successful campaigns against the Ba, the Yi, and others, suggesting she was the dynasty's go-to commander for dealing with multiple military threats. This wasn't a one-time anomaly, it was a career. And when her tomb was discovered, the physical evidence confirmed the written records. Among the dazzling jewels and ritual vessels, archaeologists found over 130 bronze weapons, including massive battle axes. These were not merely ceremonial, they were functional, deadly instruments of war, and they were the largest cache of bronze weapons found in any Shang tomb. In a society where weapons were symbols of power and authority, these axes buried with her were the ultimate proof of her title, general. Yet, to remember Fu Hao only as a general is to only see part of her breathtaking profile. Her authority on the battlefield was matched, and perhaps even made possible, by her profound influence in the spiritual and economic spheres of the Shang kingdom. In a civilization where the line between the mortal world and the spirit world was virtually non-existent, the role of the priestess was one of immense power, and Fu Hao stood at the very pinnacle of this practice. The oracle bones show her presiding over major rituals and sacrifices, a duty typically reserved for the king or the most senior male diviners. She conducted ceremonies to the Shang ancestors, to the nature deities, and to the mother of the founding king, often offering significant quantities of wine, animals, and sometimes even human sacrifices. This grisly detail underscores the seriousness of her religious office. She was a conduit to the divine, wielding the authority to intercede with the very forces that the Shang believed controlled their fate, from harvests to military victories. This spiritual clout was intertwined with formidable economic independence. The same oracle bones reveal that Fu Hao was a major landowner and a key player in the Shang economy. She managed her own agricultural estates, which produced the grain and resources that likely helped fund her military campaigns and her lavish household. The king would even perform divinations about the success of her harvests, showing a direct interest in her economic well-being. Furthermore, she was entrusted with her own fiefdom, a territory outside the capital that owed its allegiance directly to her. This combination of roles, such as military commander, high priestess, and wealthy landowner, is unparalleled for any woman in Chinese antiquity. It paints a picture of a truly singular figure who didn't just break the glass ceiling of her time. She operated in a stratosphere of power entirely of her own making, respected by the king, feared by his enemies, and communing with the gods themselves. For centuries, Fu Hao was a name whispered from the pages of oracle bones, a figure scholars knew was important but could only understand in fragments. That all changed in 1976, near the modern city of Anyang, the site of the ancient Shang capital, Inshu. Archaeologists, excavating a site known as the Royal Cemetery, uncovered a tomb designated M5. What they found inside was nothing short of an archaeological miracle. While the grander tombs of the Shang kings had been plundered to emptiness over the millennia, this smaller, modestly located burial had been miraculously overlooked. It remained sealed, exactly as it had been left over 3,000 years earlier, and its occupant was none other than the legendary Fu Hao herself. This was not just a grave, it was a perfectly preserved snapshot of her life, power, and status, allowing us to hold the physical proof of the oracle bone inscriptions in our hands. The tomb was a rectangular pit, lined with layers of earth and protective clay, and within it lay a lacquered coffin that had long since decayed, but the treasures surrounding it had not. The sheer wealth of artifacts was staggering, comprising nearly 2,000 individual objects made of bronze, jade, bone, ivory, and stone. There were elaborate hairpins and hundreds of exquisite jewelry pieces, including 128 bronze hairpins alone, suggesting her elaborate courtly attire. But beyond the personal adornments, the grave goods told a very specific story about the woman buried there. We have already mentioned the weapons, the massive battle axes, and the dozens of daggers and spears that confirmed her military might. But there was more. A staggering 468 bronze objects were found, including 130 weapons, 23 bells, and 27 ritual bronze knives. But most impressive were the ritual vessels, nearly 200 of them, used for offering food and wine to the ancestors. These were not merely ceremonial. In the Shang world, owning and using such vessels was the ultimate symbol of political and religious authority. The fact that she possessed her own complete set, including huge and intricately decorated ding cauldrons, some inscribed with her name, meant she could communicate with the divine in her own right. Furthermore, the tomb contained over 750 jade objects, a collection that remains one of the most important in all of Chinese history. These jades weren't all local. They came from various regions, some from hundreds of miles away, acting as silent testaments to the reach of her military campaigns or the breadth of her trade networks. And then, there were the grimmer confirmations of her power. The skeletons of 16 humans, likely servants or prisoners of war sacrificed to accompany her into the afterlife, and 6 dogs. The tomb at Inshu did not just contain the history of Fu Hao. It was the final, undeniable confirmation of it, transforming her from a semi-legendary name into a living, breathing, and formidable historical figure. The story of Fu Hao does not end with the magnificent treasures of her tomb. In many ways, that discovery was just the beginning of a profound reassessment of the ancient world. Her legacy is a dual one. First, she forces us to completely reconsider the role of women in early civilizations. For a long time, history has painted ancient societies, particularly those as warlike and ritualistic as the Shang, as rigidly patriarchal, with women confined to domestic spheres. Fu Hao smashes that stereotype to pieces. She was not an exception that proves the rule. She is evidence that the rules we assumed were far more complex and flexible. She demonstrates that in the right circumstances, with the right personality and intelligence, a woman could not only participate in, but dominate the highest echelons of military command, spiritual practice, and economic enterprise. She was by any definition a fully realized sovereign power in her own right. Her legacy is also deeply personal. The oracle bones reveal a relationship with King Wu Ding that was far more than a political alliance. After her death, the king repeatedly made divinations, inquiring if her spirit was causing him toothache, or if she was being properly cared for by the ancestors in the afterlife. He conducted special rituals to summon her spirit to join his in blessings, showing a depth of personal attachment and reverence that transcends the centuries. Fu Hao is no longer a ghost in the inscriptions. She is one of the most complete and vividly known individuals from the entire ancient world. We know her accomplishments, her possessions, her responsibilities, and even the grief her passing caused. She bridges the chasm of time, reminding us that history is not just about dynasties and artifacts, but about extraordinary people. Her story challenges our modern assumptions, showing us that concepts of female power and leadership are not modern inventions, but have deep, resonant roots in the very dawn of civilization. The saga of Fu Hao, the warrior queen, priestess, and landowner, is one of the most compelling narratives to emerge from the ancient world. Her story is a powerful reminder that the past still holds incredible secrets, waiting for a single discovery to rewrite everything we thought we knew. If you want to join us as we continue to unearth these lost stories and explore the depths of our shared human history, make sure you subscribe to Ancient Odyssey.